just gonna pull up these questions real quick.
I guess just tell a little bit about, Three Keys. What's the history there?
Sure. Yeah, I started the company back in 2016, and we purchased some property here in Kentucky that has an old building that's on the National Historic Register. And my family does not have history in the spirits industry, but we knew when we bought the property, my husband and our three boys, that we wanted to save that building. It's in a lot of disrepair, but it's a piece of history, right? And that's important to us. So we decided to create a company because in Kentucky there's horses and there's bourbon, and we don't know anything about horses. So we started learning more about bourbon, and our location is pretty well positioned to be very close to the Cincinnati airport, which is actually in Kentucky. So eventually we'll be the closest tasting room on the craft bourbon tour there. And we knew we wanted roots for our three boys. So now we have some acreage here. And I wrote 3 KY Sons on a bar napkin. All good ideas start on bar napkins, apparently. And the 3 KY Sons just spelled 3 keys, and that's where the name came from. And we actually found some old bootleg distilling piping and items on our creek here. So we think back in the day there was some bootleggers were only a couple miles from the Ohio River. So that was pretty interesting to find that we had history right here on property. And we learned from there, worked with the Kentucky Distillers Association to get ourselves educated in the industry and launch the brand. The first product at the end of 2019. Turns out that wasn't such great timing, but survived that. And then we've since launched a second product, our barrel proof, at the end of last year. So continue to move forward and, working with awesome folks like yourselves, spreading the word on the brand and getting visibility. And that's what helps, because we're truly, bootstraps kind of budget here. It's just us. So it's been neat. It's been fun.
This is sort of a cliche question, but what makes Kentucky bourbon different?
What makes Kentucky bourbon different? So recently I learned that it's also what makes horses fast. So we are full of limestone water, and limestone water very uniquely flavors bourbon and also makes horses' bones and muscles strong. So I think that's why Kentucky has thrived in both horse racing as well as the bourbon industry. We have the longest continuous underground cave in the world. You didn't know that? Because of these limestone deposits. And that's what makes it unique here in Kentucky. I'd say it's one of two things. So the second item is, in Kentucky, we have truly all 4 seasons. So when you're aging bourbon, certainly don't want to do it temperature controlled, right? So you want it to get the cold and the heat will expand it into the wood, and really when it gets cold, it'll contract it back out. So that's what really ages the bourbon really well, and in some cases a little quicker than in other geographical areas, I think, which is why we've had a lot of good luck picking our particular mash bill and aging it here in Kentucky, because it makes it, we don't do anything, electronic or anything like that. But the different seasons do tend to age it really well.
And so what makes Three Keys bourbon or whiskey bourbon different?
What makes it different? So I think we got really lucky in finding kind of a perfect storm. So we have a certified Kentucky Proud product, which means that a majority, over 80% of our ingredients are grown in Kentucky. And again, that's given the seasons and the rich soil and the limestone water, that really helps with the agricultural part of bourbon, the initial part of bourbon where it's born. And I think with Three Keys, our particular mash bill, while we're not a rye, we're a little bit higher rye than most of the normal bourbon whiskeys. And I think it just helps with that full flavor at a young age. So as young as 2 years, we're getting that full deep color, we're getting that caramel, we're getting the walnut flavor. And I think we've honestly just been really, really lucky with that.
So you said you just launched a new product. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the new line?
We did. So when we launched our first product, we were working with another craft distillery just to learn, right? So we knew we were doing things right. And he looked at our first batch and said, "You're going to want to do a barrel proof." So ever since we launched in 2019, we knew we wanted to try it. And when we did, this was our third round of bottling. I said, "You know what? We're gonna pull out one of these barrels." We picked one particular barrel and we did a cask strength, and it went wild. When we launched it, I think we sold 7 cases the first night.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was really successful. So we'll definitely continue that, and it will always be that single barrel cask strength type of product. So we're really excited about that one. That's usually a 3-year age product.
What drove you to start your own brand?
Yeah, so I think it was both having the historic building here on site, but also just wanting to create roots for our boys. My husband didn't really have roots growing up, and it's just really important to us that they have a sense of home and a sense of land and what that means. And maybe they'll take over the brand, maybe they won't, but it was just always really important. So having that entrepreneurial side and wanting to create our own company, that's how we channeled that energy. We both have day jobs and hope that those go by the wayside and 3 Ps is full-time very soon. But that's how we wanted to channel that energy and just show the boys what that meant.
Do you have like an ideal day where you would break out a glass of bourbon?
We're in that season right now. There are 2 times. So we're in late spring, and here in Kentucky, I've got some shade on my back porch and on a swing, and I can look at the backyard and watch a lot of animals, kind of a whole Snow White vibe back there. And that's nice. I also love watching the leaves fall in the fall. So that's really, really neat time. We can get the fire pit going and perfect. Chef's kiss.
What about the packaging for 3 Keys? Is there like a story behind that, or like a,
Yeah, so we did a lot of research on packaging. I'm glad you asked that. So we talked to stores and bartenders and got some horror stories around weird bottles shaped like skulls and rocks, and how they were hard to handle and hard to keep behind the bar and hard to find shelf space. So we wanted something simple, but not too moonshiny, if that makes sense. Not too mason jarish, moonshiny. And we went with a fairly simple Nordic taller bottle, and then COVID ate it. So after our first batch, I could not get the glass from anywhere. So we had to go a little shorter and fatter. Happens to the best of us, right? So I think I've finally located some glass again closer to the first batch that's a little taller, which means we'll have to resize the label again. But yeah, COVID ate our original bottle, so we've had short, stubby ones for a little while.
Is there a word that best describes your bourbon?
Authentic. Authentic. We try to stay true to ingredients and processes that have been used for hundreds of years. And we're not a fancy bottle, we're not a fancy label, we're a stock bottle. Labels are rectangle printed. We write on each label what that exact bottle is, and everybody knows exactly when it was bottled, where it came from. All of that is handwritten on there. So I think authentic is probably the best word to use.
Have you visited New Orleans before?
I proposed to my husband in New Orleans.
That's awesome. That's a good story.
On Jackson Square. So yes, we love New Orleans, definitely. It's our second home.
Do you have, I guess, if you remember, do you have like a favorite restaurant or bar in your time in New Orleans?
Let's see. So I think it's still open. There's, so Johnny White's has a balcony on Bourbon Street, and love just having lunch or dinner there because you can people watch all day long. So that's I'd have to say, Royal House is a good one, but Yeah, lots of little places that we like to make sure we hit every time.
Do you have a favorite musician and a favorite movie?
Favorite musician? That's a loaded question. I'd have to say for her business acumen and longevity, I'd have to give that to Dolly Parton. Rock and roll wise, probably go with Heart as a band. Guns N' Roses is also an easy go-to. Movie, I'm an old sap. Gone with the Wind.